Welcome to SAM Conversation, an online program of South Asia Monitor. Today, we are going to recall a great personality of the Indian Navy, Admiral Ronald Linsdale Pereira, a former naval chief. It's his centenary year going. Ronnie, as he was very affectionately known as, was the kind you don't see every day. It takes quite a bit to make a guy like him. To discuss and to also educate us is Commodore Srikant Kesnur, well-known historian of the Indian Navy.
Thank you,
Srikant,
sir.
I cannot but yes, please.
No, sir. Great to be here. I can hardly say I will educate anyone, but it's a pleasure talking about Ronnie P. or Admiral Pereira.
Absolutely no doubt. Absolutely no doubt. I cannot but recall the a few thousands of us who went through the National Defense Academy. For us, he was a naval commandant seen after, I think, quite a number of years.
Yes.
And naval deputy commandant, who we saw after a number of years. We're quite used to seeing, those from the Army. They were the most common. And the odd one from the Air Force, the Navy were the rarest. And this was in the early 70s when the Navy had started wearing, I think you call it dress 8A, the one which
That's right.
has white shirt, trousers, a belt, buckskin shoes, and with the ribbon, service ribbons, and
Ribbon. Yes.
name tag.
Yeah.
Here was one who we saw for the first time in the good old dress number 8, which was baggy shorts and a white shirt, no belt, the shorts held by 2 buckles. And we later discovered one of the purposes, one of the great, applicability of that dress was that in his staff car, in his staff car's trunk was a golf set, shoes to be worn for football and for hockey.
Yes.
So he, from after lunch, he could be found on any of these 3, locations with just the buckskin white shoes taken off and the appropriate shoes meant for golf, football,
Yes.
or hockey on, and with a stick. And he was an absolute, uh, devil on the field at his
Yes.
age then. At his age then, and I think it was a gunnery. It was a gunnery accident
That's right.
that um, that shattered his left elbow so badly
Yes.
that
Left on.
he couldn't bend it fully, and yet he could give his opponents in golf or hockey a very tough time.
That's right, sir.
That you know damaged elbow notwithstanding. Now we also got used to his very, if he was a disciplinarian, then I think he was as harsh on, in disciplining himself.
That's right.
We'll come to that later, but I'm sure uh, Commodore Kesnur will have so many interesting uh, anecdotes and some very useful and educative facts to state about him. Srikant, please.
Thank you, sir. Wonderful to be here. And as you have brought out certain aspects of his character already, and we can go over them again, his being a very, very, you know, a disciplinarian who was first and foremost harsh on himself, or he was great on sports, and yet he also had the love of all the cadets. I think we should have a good chat on his time in NDA. But sir, Ronnie, as we all say, I'd like to tell through you to your viewers and listeners that he is an iconic figure as far as the Indian Navy or indeed the Indian military is concerned.
No
I
doubt,
think
no doubt, no doubt.
I think if you saw the amount of people who were there when he passed away, they belonged to all three services. And I think there was a kind of universal acclaim about that man. He passed
No
away
doubt.
at the relatively young age of 70. And yet there was such love for him across all three services. So he's an iconic figure. And we have to try and understand that. I mean, the bare bone details is that he was the ninth chief of naval staff from 79 to 82. He got commissioned in 43. He had a distinguished career. He was a gunnery specialist. But what made him sort of very, very different, I think were two or three factors which I'd like to place before you. In fact, I suffer from the fact that I never met or interacted with him. So it's entirely based on testimonies of people like you who have seen him, and of course on reading extensively about him. So one, I think, sir, that with Ronnie, you could say that there was a kind of intense and great love for the Navy, for the services, for the way of life of the military, so to say, and all the values and virtues that life in the armed forces gave. So I think I mean, he was himself the son of a army doctor. He loved many things or everything about the forge, and he particularly, of course, loved the Navy. He had opted for it. So there was a kind of deep and passionate love for the Navy, which translated into everything he did. The second aspect, I would say, sir, is that he was a man of remarkable integrity, and that integrity came through as a shining example. I mean,
No doubt.
he was kind of very austere, very Spartan. I mean, look, here is the Navy chief who, on retirement, needs to
Owned a
have
Lambretta.
clothes
Loan
to
owned a
get a
Lambretta scooter.
Lambretta scooter. You know, he lived a life that was
And
complete.
he refused. He refused a very nice bungalow in an enviable part of Mumbai. Um, which was just sort of falling into his lap.
True, true. Refused all post-retirement sinecures, was sort of above and beyond any sort of temptation, and that was very clear to people around him. So he was extremely, a man of the greatest integrity, patriotism, who lived a very, very, simple life. And the third aspect, as we would see, is this very charismatic combination of his personality. He could be simultaneously a very strict disciplinarian, and he
Yes.
could be extremely generous, concerned, compassionate with people all around. He was a great professional, but he could he could sort of party till the cows come home. And he had a fantastic personality, like you said. Uh, there was a very physical aspect of it. Tall, handsome, very articulate, very fond of sort of gestures, flamboyant, so to say,
Yeah, yeah.
sharp in
Full
his
of
uniform,
full of life,
and yet
and you could never miss his laughter. You know, when he
exactly you could not
when
miss his laughter. I've heard
if
that
he
from
had
so
his
many
anger,
people.
if he had his moments of anger, he had his
Yeah.
moments of great, laughter, which could encourage others to join in.
Exactly. I've heard of his full-throated laughter as being so infectious, so loud it could be heard across. I think he was a very magnetic kind of personality. So I think these three qualities, I mean, obviously there are many when you want to sort of unpack a person, leading by example, striving in the hard way, a man who confronted his own doubts often himself. But I think these are the three main qualities: great love for the Navy, the highest sense of integrity, and a fantastic personality that defined him in a sense and made him a very iconic figure.
Um, as you know, as cadets in the National Defense Academy, we were really quite overcome by so many aspects of his personality. I mean, you can't help but be in awe of a guy who is very professional, very strict, but who can join you on the games field, you know,
Yes,
just in a most informal way, and give you a run for your money on the field.
yes,
Uh,
yes.
that,
A great,
that is
great
one
golfer.
uh, golfer, footballer, hockey. He maybe played other games also, but these were the ones in which
Swimming,
he
swimming too, sir.
participated with the cadets
Absolutely. I
uh,
believe he was a
very
good
often.
swimmer too. So too.
Swimmer also. That's how he and I interacted, because the first time that he saw me on the swimming pool, I used to top in breaststroke and butterfly, dolphin kick, 100 meters, and I was quite a nuisance in a water polo game also. Um, so the very uh, first after the first swimming competition which he witnessed, he called me over and we had a nice 15-minute chat on you know when you started, how you went about it, and what all have you done in the past, etc. And then at the end of it, he says, make sure there are no weak swimmers around you. At times when in the academy you needed to goad some of your course mates who are a little shy of the water. And
Yes,
the other um, place where he saw me was on stage. Um, from the very first play that he saw, um, he saw us for about I, I saw about two terms of him, fifth term and sixth term, and it was something was which left a tremendous uh, impression on all of us. On me personally, of course, very much so. One more, you know, uh, he didn't have children.
yes,
He didn't have children, and yet he had such a love for children. Um, we had um, um, my old friend SPS Bhalla, retired as
Mike
a
Bhalla,
brigadier.
sir.
Um, Sant Sant Pratap Singh Bhalla became Mike Bhalla because SPS Bhalla resembled Ronnie's nephew
That's right.
who had died in an air crash.
That's right. That's right.
And he, you know, he adopted this. He adopted SPS Balla, and he was thereafter known as Mike. And
Mike.
it was a very, very close relationship. And that that was the only, I mean, that is one because of his resemblance. But there were so many other cadets who he could interact with, who he, remember, and also those um, uh, he was a great one for giving on the spot punishments.
Punishments. Yes. So that I think, sir, you bring out so many issues. One is the very strong human aspect about the person. Close relationship. He knew in a cadet in an NDA where cadets come and go, there are 1,500 of them. He seemed to know most of them by name or by face.
Yes, yes.
And while he would dish out punishments, I understand and I believe that it was more as a deterrent to reform them. And if he came to know that any of these would lead to relegation or something like that, he would promptly withdraw them or cancel them on the book, so that the cadet would not suffer on any account. His
Oh,
basic
yeah.
idea was to reform, and then he
We
would make
reform
sure that
through great stress on the heels and feet of the of the
yes, of
cadets,
course.
making
I
them not just do restrictions on the parade ground, but also scale the Singad Hill, which is a very steep one,
Yes, yes, it
where
is. It is. Uh, uh, I know. So I mean, but isn't that the great part about the man, that he would
of
have this
course,
thing?
of course,
He would have the singer, and then he would arrange refreshments on top, or wait back for you with refreshments. Often join you on those hikes. It's interesting, as someone said the other day, that this is the admiral who introduced both the singered hike as a punishment and the NDA ball as a sort of advertisement or
yes, of course, of course, of course.
so I think that tells you various aspects about the person.
And he also, I feel, was a great catalyst for jointness, which NDA is one of the National Defence Academy is one of the very few prize service academies, and yet in real life we see that the genuine jointness that should uh, should exist, that should come into play, particularly in great matters related to strategy, doctrine, war. There are times when we we falter.
Yes, yes.
We
I think
falter.
you're right.
It's the guys like him. They brought about that I don't care what you are, Army, Navy, or Air Force. First of all, you've got to be a good man,
Absolutely,
a solid man.
absolutely, absolutely.
You've got to
And
be
I
a
think
very tough man. You've got to be tough.
uh,
You've got to be mentally tough, physically tough, and you've got to be a man with solid moral fiber.
true, sir, true.
These are the
And
kind of
and
yeah.
yeah, that thing comes out. I think what you say is absolutely right. That and ironically, he was not ex-NDA, but so he comes and he
So what?
becomes an
He becomes one of the
exemplar of jointness.
leading lights. He becomes one of the leading lights. Between we often would comment. I think General Gupta, Somnath Gupta, who was his commandant. I said, this is one commandant who's having a ball because he
True,
he
because
is
the
a very
because the Depcom was everywhere.
yeah, and would keep him fully informed, would never be stepping on his toes, despite being a very active deputy commandant. Uh, I mean, proper in every way.
True, sir. And in fact, sir, that reputation of his as someone who did something for the services, who saw overall also the larger purpose of the services was reflected in I think, apart from NDA and NDA cadets, in many other jobs he did subsequently as he went higher up in the service. I think he won the unstinted admiration of people from
Of
across the
course, of the
services,
Indian Navy. No
the
doubt.
Indian Army
Absolutely
and
no
the
doubt.
Indian Air Force too. And
Yeah.
his role, for example, in sort of campaigning vigorously for the entitled rations, for example, or various aspects of accommodation for men, I think they had a tri-service effect beyond the navy, and he in a way won the appreciation and admiration of everyone from all the three services, and perhaps the grudging admiration of the bureaucrats in the Ministry of Defense and elsewhere too,
Yes.
because
Yes.
of his uncompromising stand when it came to the welfare of the people.
Exactly. When it came to issues of welfare operations, you know, uh, and he, I think he was able to, achieve a lot in getting sanctions for which at times can take, uh, can spend long periods on the LBW tray, let the
Yes,
blighter
yes.
wait tray.
No, 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 absolutely, sir. He was a doer. He could go walk into the offices, push for the case. He was that kind. I think he was always best on field. Admiral Nanda actually said that in his ACR sort of thing, that he's a man who's best to be on field. I don't
Yes,
think Ronnie very much liked poring over files or pushing them or something like that. So he was a doer. He was a man of action. He was the best, of course, when on ships and fleet and leading from the front.
in fact,
And
after he left after he got posted out from the NDA, and that was, I think, on promotion also.
yes,
He held some
sev-
key appointments. And then we
yes,
heard that he at the as a CNC, he
yeah,
was a very, you know, one who stood out.
yes, yes.
Um,
Uh,
that's
uh,
what I recall.
No, absolutely, sir. From there, he went on promotion in command of the Eastern Fleet. He was
Eastern
the
Fleet.
second commander of the newly formed Eastern Fleet. It was on promotion in April of 1973, and
Yes,
he had about a year and a half tenure there. Then he went to Southern Naval Command as the FOC. Then came to West as the CNC, then did vice chief of naval staff. So he had, by the time he became the chief, he had an experience of all operational commands of south, east, west,
yes, yes, yes.
vice chief, and I think he was well poised to take over as the chief with all those experiences. Absolutely, even as a chief, he set you know the same standards that he had always been following, and he
Oh,
expected everyone to do it.
and as a chief, he would. Uh, he was so hard on himself. He never used the official car. Very often he was found using cars of colleagues who gone on leave, and till I think one of his aides uh, sort of informed him that, sir, there is a
Provision
provision
in the rules. Yes,
in the rules under amenities that you can, uh, and that's well. He may have made a very limited use of that. But
yes,
what is most touching is that this great guy retires owning a Lambretta scooter.
that's right. That's
And
right.
in 83, he has a serious accident,
So,
road accident,
yes,
out of which he comes out.
yes,
I think um, some naval officers were probably not aware that it's not that which killed him. He died of cancer 10 years later.
Yeah,
Uh,
true. But sir, again
some
here, uh, like you brought out, is remarkable. You're right. It's the cancer that killed him. And as he said, he would remonstrate later in his life that this comes out of a lifetime of blowing smoke, and he would admonish young people and tell them, don't take up smoking. See what it has done to me. But what is remarkable about the man is, if you see these accidents also, there is a kind of fighting back from hopeless situations.
yes, yes, yes,
In
the
the
fighting
in
spirit.
the in the early 50s, he fights. You brought out this big accident in the gun. I mean, it
Yes,
might have killed. It might have killed people. He would have
absolutely,
lost
absolutely.
lost his hand.
It could have killed him.
Uh, yes, so he almost shattered his left arm, then comes out and is fit
And
after all that.
he has that his doctor then also has to be
Yes,
thanked that he saved the arm, otherwise it could have been amputated.
true. Then later, after about 10, 15 years, he suffers severely from tuberculosis. Not even 10, 15 years. Before that, late 50s, I think, he's admitted for 1 year in Khadki, in what is now the CTC or whatever.
Yes,
That
yes,
1 year and very few people remember at that time tuberculosis was a far more dangerous. I mean, even now it is, but at
of
that
course.
time far more. The man, many people thought that that's the end of his career, that, severe setback. He bounces back from that. And then he has this scooter accident after retirement. He sort of bounces back from that. So
That
this is a man who is in some ways, destiny's child. Of
who
course,
defy,
ultimate,
uh, literally defied death
literally
more
defying
than
death.
more than a couple of times in his life.
Yes, yes, yes. And of course, ultimately, he passed away early because of maybe cumulative effect of all that, his smoking, his cancer. But again, a remarkable man, because you have to show amazing willpower, amazing courage, amazing audacity to come back from these kind of situations. That's the point I'm making.
And, there's SPS Bhalla has written a book going into about 500 pages
Yes, yes,
where
yes.
he's recorded the paragraphs of a lot of cadets of our times who
True.
uh, who interacted with him, or who had something, or who were punished very hard by him, but
Yes, yes,
who
yes.
who despite all that who could never uh, get over their admiration of and I had the pleasure of not just reading this book but reviewing it, and its review was carried quite widely, and I couldn't help using the term the admirable admiral.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. Um, Mike Bhalla sir's book is called The Admiral I Knew, and
You.
it came out. And very nicely, sir, within few days after that, this book also
Yeah,
came.
there it is.
I'm
Yes,
showing this.
yes.
This is by Commander Anup, which says with pride and honor. So there are two books on the Admiral, and I think anyone interested in the life and times of this remarkable person should buy both the books. The Admiral I Knew by Mike Valla and With Pride and Honor by Anup Thomas. These give us so much. I mean, mind you, there's still probably many things not written.
So many
Uh,
things
no,
that
uh,
we have not come out with, or we not covered, or which are not known. But
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely, sir. But that is what, at least, for so that future generations, and not merely military students and others, I think even civilians and other people who are interested in sort of
oh
uh,
yes, oh yes, he had lessons which would be very, very useful to learn for
True.
uh, for student civilians in corporate. Absolutely.
Yes. So, sir, if uh, since we are discussing the man, I think it's worth bringing out some different incidents in his life. I mean, talking about his whole life and career will probably take us several hours, but
Yes.
it's worth discussing some incidents here, of his life to bring out the person. And you have recollected some of them, maybe we could discuss. I'll bring out some things that I've only, of course, read or heard. I haven't, like I said, I haven't had the chance
I
to.
for that I think Mike Bhalla's book will be quite, but then it gives only um, his it covers a period only when he was a commodore, a deputy commandant of the National Defence Academy. Whereas here's a guy who I think at every rank he had something
Yes, yeah, he
to
had,
contribute.
and we must take care of people who might not read the books. These days, attention span
Exactly,
of
exactly.
attention span
The
of people is
the guys
limited.
who only with the flick of the finger. Um,
So, sir, to my mind, if I can recollect, some of the incidents which are imprinted, like they're almost like these great stories that are told again and again about Ronnie. Uh, One of them relates to the fact that when he was the captain of INS Delhi, uh, and INS
ah,
Delhi is
ah,
a very close competitor in the what is called the boat pulling regatta. Uh, you
yes,
you you do, and boat pulling, as you know water sports well, can be
absolutely.
very strenuous, and
Very
particularly
strenuous.
in a race. And Delhi and Mysore were sort of very strongly competing with each other. We're talking of the old Delhi and Mysore, not their
Yes,
current
yes,
version.
yes, yes.
So even the current versions strongly compete with each other. So what happens is there is this annual regatta. Ronnie is commanding Delhi, and uh, one of his teams comes first. Uh, the engineers, the stokers, ME's team as we call it, they come first. But because they have sort of pulled in the wrong race, they are disqualified, which means not only they lose this one, they completely lose all the points for that race when it is tight. Even worse, their race is the next race. So now we don't know what happens, but Ronnie takes his boat, goes to those guys in the at the end of that racing point in the channel, and he tells them something. He speaks something to them, but these guys are told to go back and race again. So can you imagine someone who's finished a cross country immediately being asked to do cross country again? So these guys are they go back, they pull, and sir, wonder of wonders, they come first again. They come first again. So this is, I mean, his magic of his leadership, his
Leadership
leadership is
quality, no
illustrated
doubt.
in this. And the great thing, sir, the great thing, this of course is a great story, but that sailors team and Ronnie stayed in touch long after he was CO Delhi, he was CNS, after he had retired, because those people sort of saw him as a demigod, and he saw in them saviors of his reputation. So it was a magical alchemy between the leader and the led.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
there are this is the sort of thing, sir. Uh, so there is another incident, and this I have very few people know. I must tell this to you because this is probably not there in the books that is written, as far as I know. Oh, there's only 1 minute left, so I guess we'll have to wrap up, sir. But we must wrap up also saying. a big gratefulness and thank you to Phyllis Pereira, his wife, and someone who stood by him all the time. Without her, he would not have been,
Yes,
half the man.
yes, yes. A great lady herself, great lady
Yes.
herself, no doubt.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Srikant, for recalling a delightful and a great guy, and great asset for the services. Uh, Thank you and all the best.
Thank you, sir. Great being with you all. Fantastic.
Pleasure.